Yep, we're live. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. Today's discussion is something that I actually intended to discuss a long time ago because the article that inspired this discussion was written in 2018, if I remember correctly. But I actually did not know the Twitter handles of the authors of the article at that time, and me being a lazy bum, and I'm not very active on Twitter, so I did not follow up. So that's my fault. But then finally, I think Aloke shared another article on Swarajya, which was written in 2019, written by somebody else. And then when they shared the article, they also shared the link to the previous one. I was like, this is the best time so to get them on the podcast. So Alok and Ranajay, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, hello everybody. Thank you, Kushal, for having both of us here on this podcast. I will just begin with a very basic housekeeping, that is to introduce ourselves and to the audience. My name is Ranajay Ghosh, and I am an assistant professor at the University of Central Florida at Orlando. And before that, I'm in mechanical and aerospace engineering. And I did my undergraduate Bachelor of Technology BTech from IIT at Kharagpur, and thereafter I did my PhD at Cornell University in Ithaca in New York, and I mostly teach, mechanical systems, mechanical machines, and that kind of stuff in my classes. So I will like to give the mic to Alok to introduce himself.
So, namaste, Kushal, and thanks again for calling us here. So, we were actually batchmates at IIT, and he went off to Cornell, I went to Purdue to do my PhD. And after that, I've been working at a few places. Right now, I'm an assistant professor at IISc Bangalore, but I just returned back to India only a couple of years ago. And I teach fluid mechanics. That's the topic of my love. And
Yeah, and just to be clear, these views are our personal views. These are not real sanctioned by our employers by any means.
Right.
So yeah, and yeah, go ahead.
So here's my question: why did you guys even think about? You start the article by something very interesting. You use the term Jugaadism. It was not just Jugaad. You used the word, a very specific word. I clearly remember you start the article by saying Jugaadism. So can you guys explain what you meant when you were saying Jugaadism?
Yeah, I will definitely. We'll both speak on this, but let me start with how we got to this problem. Okay, why were we thinking about this problem, and then we'll come to the definitions and stuff like that. So we have been thinking about Jugaad for quite some time actually, because we face the brunt of it every day, okay? Probably every minute, if some things are a product of Jugaad. And we have been thinking, if it's a disease, if Jugaad is a disease that afflicts us, when did we contract this disease? Is it a part of our ancient DNA, like agriculture? Or is it something we picked up on the way, like communism or socialism or something like that? Okay. And if it is a disease, is it going to go away on its own, like common cold? Or is it going to hurt us forever without any cure, like arthritis? So what is it exactly? So what is the nature of this disease? And that got us thinking. So the entire article is essentially revolving around this this idea about how did we get to this, what is it, but we can't start the discussion if we don't define what we really mean by this Jugaadism. I think Dr. Kumar can fill me up on this better than I can.
I think one of the first discussions we started having was when we had come for trips to India.
Yeah.
And Jugaad is sometimes you don't have to define something. It just stands out. Jugaad is this abrupt thing and half-assed solution to a problem that is just there. And Indian cities are teeming with Jugaad. We have we don't. We will suddenly have a bus stop come up in the middle of a road. We'll have a pothole, a huge drain in the middle of a road. We'll have nothing is properly integrated, right? And just to give you an example, I was traveling. So this summer, I made a huge road trip of 4,000 kilometers across India. And it was nice to see that the infrastructure has changed, maybe some of the time that you have been coming here. And you have these amazing 4-lane highways, much like US and Europe.
Yeah.
Right?
Even better than that.
Yeah, even better than that. And you have this really nice experience driving on a 25-meter wide highway. And all of a sudden, the road just ends. I mean, it just ends. The road ends, giving way to a 5-meter narrow lane, which is riddled with potholes. I mean, not even potholes; they're probably impact craters. And you have these huge trucks trying to manage. And I think so before we define, I think it is that attitude of manage kar lo yaar. You know, I mean, so what if I did not put a sign saying that the road is going to end and you have to take a detour from here? Manage kar lo, chalta hai.
Yeah, chalta hai. And that and we suffer from this last mile problem in India, right? On everything, that things are there, but we are very close, but not quite there. Okay? And one of the reasons we get this last mile problem is because all the solutions are actually a product of this is a way of thinking. Okay? This is a piecemeal way of thinking that we never think anything in an integrated fashion, and it's everywhere. I'm not just saying only the cities; it's everywhere. If you look at, I don't know, if you look at even our Bollywood movies, for example, there's abruptness everywhere. So cities are abrupt. The abruptness is almost like a plot device. Something suddenly happens. Okay, there is there's a scene, and then
there's a dance. There's an important scene going on. There's a dance.
There's suddenly a dance sequence that has nothing to do with the movie, or suddenly a mall appears somewhere, and a hero is driving in a car there. If you watch this, especially afflicted, this is an affliction of maybe 80s and 90s movies more than we have right now. But you can see that the things have not been thought through. People think that the consumers can just they won't care probably, and this is a pervasive way of thinking. And what I would back up Aloke on this is Jugaad is like vulgarity. Okay? You don't have to define it properly. When you see it, you know it. That it's bad. It's grotesque. it's just terrible. Okay, it probably defies definition, but you know it. You see it, and you know this is a product of Jugaad. Okay? This is this solution has come from Jugaad.
So in a sense, Jugaad has only one element, this element of surprise, and the visual appeal maybe of
surprise is not in a good way.
Yeah, surprise you in not a good way, and the visual appeal of a hyena, the rabid hyena. So
that is, by the way, one of the quickest stink test of if something is Jugaad or not, or something has been a product of this thinking is the thing is just aesthetically not pleasing, and it's not a coincidence. It is inbuilt into it. It's the way these things are made. If I give you a jerry-rigged bicycle, which probably generates some power to churn a lassi or something, I've seen those examples. Okay, there's a guy who's biking and the shaft goes and it churns some lassi somewhere, and that's supposed to be like a tremendous Jugaad solution of something. This thing doesn't look right. Something is off, or that AC. With ice on it. I think you would probably be better to.
Yeah, I mean, these solutions don't even make sense. I mean, some of these maybe are funny, but we have serious repercussions. On the other side, you have Jugaad garbage solutions, right? Yeah. You have garbage. Suddenly, so people will just throw it on the road because there is no system to collect. Yeah. We don't have a waste management system, and we have never thought of as Indian megacities grow in number. By the way, a huge part of our population is now moving into cities. We cannot anymore say that we are a rural civilization.
We are no longer.
And have we thought of how we will manage our garbage in there? We haven't. And it's like, manage kar lo yaar. Take those. You just put it here, that guy will come and collect it. It's not even a spot where it's supposed to be there. Right?
Yeah, so Jugaadism is a way of thinking. So it's like, what should I say? It's a piecemeal, non-integrated, not thought through. It's not a product of Manthan, okay, so to speak. You haven't really thought it through.
So what I loved was the second paragraph in your article, and I actually want to read it because I think everybody who is watching this right now or is going to watch it later needs to hear it too. So you guys say Jugaad is a neologism arising from the Indic practice to gather. When the bar is set low, even gathering ingredients is fait accompli. In touting it as a laudable achievement, we not only hold ourselves back from the final finished product, but more dangerously, the very process of seeking the solution It is the seeking, the manthan that is the backbone of irreversible positive development in a successful society. So let's try and break this down now. Now this is why I titled it, is Jugaad, incentivizing mediocrity or celebrating some unique sort of excellence? Now, I'll give you my personal experience. So I think it was in last year or the year before that, we were having a discussion in the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. So there was this Maharashtra Pollution Control Board discussion where the industry was invited, and some of us were there representing the industry. So there were some professors from IIT Powai. They had done an amazing research, to showcase what are the problems that are causing the pollution. So they had done basically the analysis was about the suspended particulate matter, the SPM. And we can totally connect it to what's happening in Delhi right now too, by the way, because the research overlaps on most things across India. So they basically had the reason. So the primary reason in the case of Mumbai or the surrounding areas like Navi Mumbai and etc., the primary reason, not to my shock really, but to the shock of many sitting there from within the industry, were roads. Bad roads, and bad roads with horrendous footpaths. And they explained how a design is supposed to be. Like if you have a road of this design vis-a-vis this design A has no SPM, design B with a bad footpath has like few times high the SPM in that area. Then they shared it was two-wheelers, of all the things, two-wheelers. And combine that with tempo travelers. And to my horror, I thought industry was the biggest reason for our SPM. Industry was not even in the top 4 in this area. Now Aloke had commented on this on Twitter on the Delhi pollution issue too. So I think that was a classic case of completely misplaced priorities. Now, both of you are men of science, right? You are products of a scientific mindset, a scientific, way of looking at things. Now, this is my problem with Jugaad as such. When you have your societal DNA corrupted with this Jugaad mentality, so what you try to do every time you face a problem, like right now we're facing this problem of horrendous pollution where lives are getting lost. Not everybody in Delhi can afford a bloody air purifier. They can't. There are so many poor people. What about their lives? And we know the reasons. Nobody wants to talk about them. But one chief minister will say, "Chalo, odd even kar lete hain." Then the Delhi BJP will come and say, "Hum dharna denge." अरे क्या धरना दे रहे हो यार? किस बात का धरना दे रहे हो? तुम सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट हो. And then everybody is playing this mediocrity football with each other, and everybody hits the football from one end to the other. And I experienced that in my own experience in MPCV. And I was like, what the hell are we doing? And it struck to me, you know what? It is this Jugaad mentality. It is this mentality of being mediocre, where we don't want to face harsh realities. So do you guys agree with this, or you think it is not necessarily the Jugaad mentality that makes us do this?
No. It is Jugaad. We will go one step further, and we will say 99% of the problem is this mentality, this ism. We think this way. Okay? We do not have a kind of a threshold to take high intensity pain for a short amount of time. But we are willing to take low intensity pain forever. We are fine with it. Okay? We can't take a spike. That is, we need to buckle down and take some punches for some time to fix the system. That has not happened. I'm afraid. I think probably we don't have an example of this.
No, this is just brilliant, because this is exactly what Jugaad leads to. It is a path that is not a path of excellence. It's a path of mediocrity.
Yeah.
And as you said, we are a nation in a hurry. We want solutions. अरे ये problem है, let's quickly fix it. जल्दी fix करो, चलो आगे बढ़ो. Exactly. So we don't have the idea of rigor. We don't have the idea of excellence. And I think one of the things we have totally missed in building up a civilizational aspiration of excellence is we have never given the proper thought or the proper izzat to our trainers. They are the people who are going to teach you what excellence is going to be about. They are the ones who are, be it your badminton game you play, be it the karate that you might be learning, be it music that you might be doing, or maybe it calculus. Right? We want excellence, and we want to be able to pay our teachers. We want to be able to invest in these trainers who will make you think in a way that is rigorous. It's on a path of excellence, and I think that's
Yeah, and overall, we just don't know what to do with excellence. Kushal, the thing that we feel is, if you look at our history, we have excellent people individually. Okay? We have, in politics, you can say Mahatma Gandhi was like an exceptional guy. He really took it to the next level. You have Bose, who thought out of the box, or you have Ramanujan, the great mathematician. You have Tagore. You have C.V. Raman. But we don't. But our relationship with that excellence is kind of very strange. We deify them. We think that it is such an impossible thing to achieve that we almost put them at the level of gods. Okay, they have to be revered. One reason why we feel like we should revere them is because we feel, yeah, ye to nahi ho sakta. Only they can do it. Okay? It's a magic that they've been able to master. Okay, which is something that common people probably will never be able to do. So everyday excellence is not in our dictionary. We just don't feel that that this is even possible. So the next thing is just do what we can. We just have to keep on applying band-aids to all the problems.
And just as you mentioned, the pollution thing, right? I mean, that I think is the single most identifier of this mediocre mindset. And Kushal put it brilliantly.
Yeah.
That and Kushal has read up. And it's so nice to see, right?
Yeah.
But look at our national discourse. How many of the newspaper articles are even discussing what is causing the pollution?
Yeah.
There are some of them are reports. Oh, Delhi is under siege. It's destroyed. Diwali aa gaya. It's over. Let us ban firecrackers on Diwali, as if that's going to solve anything. It's not going to solve anything because you are not focusing on the problem. You're just going after short term, after short term, after short term.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys actually, another beautiful line that you guys used in the article was, if Jugaad is bad, its glorification is lethal. It's actually, when I read that line, it hit me so deeply as a person who, we all love India. You love India. You guys love India. I love India. I mean, heck, why did I come back? I came back because I felt I could make a positive change and, let me contribute. But I mean, I came back in 2002, 3. I've been back and forth a few times here and there. But now I've reached a stage in my life where I feel, what the hell am I doing? I mean, if I try and make sense, and if I try to say, okay, what is the data? Do we have any data? I mean, the word data is like, kutta kaat liya kisi ko is desh mein. I mean, and everybody seems to have an opinion. In fact, another thing, if you're on Twitter and you're kind of socio-political, each side will throw this accusation of virtue signaling on everyone. So I think Jugaad is the worst form of virtue signaling. See, when you celebrate mediocrity, you are basically virtue signaling to your kind, to your tribe, or whatever that freaking tribe is online. I don't know what the hell this tribe is. I mean, I guess it's the tribe of mediocrity. I don't know what it is. And everybody, and what bothers me is that nobody wants to accept, okay, you know what? Yeah, I have the Angus Madison 1,000-page volume, history of Indian, history of economics and millennium perspective. Yes, we had 24% of the GDP. Abbe, abhi to nahi hai na. Ab ki to baat karo.
That 24%, I think, is basically everybody was farmer, right? Our population was huge. And that's how I think that's how that number was. I have a hard time to believe that you can translate that number after industrial revolution.
No, you can't. Industrial revolution was a turning point in mankind's history.
Yeah, so I don't think that 24%, we should not ever celebrate that at this point at all.
And not only, my problem with the 24% jive is that, well, like, bro, who had that wealth? I mean, you guys, everybody, I mean, who had that wealth? Did the masses have that wealth?
No.
No, the Rajas.
Yeah, all the money was at one place.
That's right. When I studied history, this was like a funny thing, right? Nadir Shah comes and he loots Delhi, and India is poor.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So he lives one city and
It's like he had all the money. Okay, the emperor had all the money with him, and once you hit that, you decapitate that treasury.
Right.
Entire country is poor. So I never understood that this guy's plundered Delhi and the country is poor now. Like, how did that happen, man? Because they had all the wealth.
That's the thing, and we need, and you know what? Look, I get it. I have to repeat it again and again. We all care for India. We want India to be the best in the world. God damn it, that's why we keep, obsessing about these things. But we're not going to be good by being mediocre. Luckily, in some areas in India, you see, just look at all the places in India where we have good things. The biggest example, people hate to admit it, is cricket, where we are actually becoming good in India because they stopped Jugaad, they became efficient, became privatized, they de-sarkarified the whole thing. No matter how much people want to abuse that gentleman from Kolkata all the time, not Ganguly, the other one, I forgot his name, Dalmia, Jagmohan Dalmia. He laid the foundation for this. Today, you go to any cricket stadium in India, that is the one place you don't see mediocrity in India. You don't see. You see excellent infrastructure, top class coaching facilities, top class attitude. Look at the current captain today. He's like, if you don't follow this fitness, the yo-yo test, if you don't pass it, you don't get in, bro. You're out of the team. Now that is the attitude we should have in every area. Now you guys are, scientists. So what I want you guys to share now is that most of India's problem are basically because we do every solution in this country is unscientific, basically. Jugaad is basically the antithesis of science. Jugaad is when science has an answer which is X, but it takes too much time. So let us do something chalu and just do lipa poti. So you guys, as people who believe in research, so what do you think? How do you guys think? So if you were to pitch, let's say you have this idea, right? So I'm sure at the end of the day, as researchers, you're going to deal with the governments, whether in this country or any country in the world, because most of the things that affect our life are government managed.
Absolutely.
So how do you think, as people of science, can you convince the bureaucracy and the people that we need to get this research done and we need to set our things in order? So Ranajay, you can start, and then Aloke, I want to hear your views too.
Yeah, so I know this is so if your question is how do you convince the government to help you? Is that your question? That how do you convince?
Yeah, basically, how do you sell this concept that Jugaad sucks to them?
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge. And so one of the things that you can do is essentially populate government with people who are essentially, they are receptive to your views. But I guess that's a very difficult thing to do. So then we do the next best thing. And that is you really have to show, you have to put numbers to the cost of Jugaad. That is something that we have not been able to put. That is, how much does it cost? There is this seminal book by Amartya Sen in which he says, the number may not be accurate, but he says lost daughters of India. Okay? And he did some analysis saying that because of female feticide or something, we lose maybe 1 million or something a year or something. I may be wrong on the number, but he put a number. The number may be wrong. Okay, the number may not be absolutely correct, but it gets the conversation going. That this is the problem. This is a crisis problem. Or if we can put a number on, say, global warming, that if this many degrees of centigrade we get, we're all dead. We're going to die. Okay? So the first thing that I would do if I were in that position as a scientist is to put numbers to it. Like, how much are we losing? My guess is that a lot of our GDP, problems that we're facing over the last 5, 8, 7 years, there is a component of Jugaad to that. That we actually picked up all the low-hanging fruits, and the next step needs rigor. The next step needs for us to really raise the game. Okay? And so if we want to talk to the government, we really need that to quantify Jugaad. So as a scientist, if this is a call that I would like to give to other scientists, if they want to get into this, is to be really good at estimating these things, that how much are we losing? Like you said right now, right? If you don't have that footpath, the sidewalk on your street, this is the cost of the pollution. But that probably is still an abstract quantity. But if I tell you that you are going to lose 5 years of your life because of this pollution, your kid is going to lose 10 years of his life due to this pollution, I think that will get the conversation starting. That every minute you don't act, this is what you're going to lose. Every minute you don't get your act together, these many jobs you'll never get, or some things of that nature. I think that is where the conversation will start. Where as as technical people, one problem I think is before I pass on the baton to him is we talk in the abstract, but we need to quantify these things. That there is a real loss to this.
So I think this is brilliant because there are, I think, two aspects to this. One is the personal loss, the loss at the level of an individual. For example, the pollution in Delhi, what is it causing, right? And there's a institutional loss, the loss at the level of the nation. So do you think, I mean, just going back to that point, some years back, the current dispensation, they said, we want to become a great manufacturing hub. It was a fantastic call, right? We want to become a great manufacturing hub. That is the way your developing country can become a developed country, right? Kushal, we were discussing the developing nation problem. So do you think we are missing the bus? Can we tell our government that the Jugaad is what is causing us to miss the bus on manufacturing?
Absolutely. I completely agree with this. That, so when we say make, something like make in India sort of stuff, there's an implicit assumption that you make in India, but you are eventually going to get other people to buy it. That's how you're going to get all your dollars. That's the whole point. I mean, there is an element of you make it and you use it. Obviously, that's the first point. But eventually, you want to, have products which are so good that people will buy. And I can't even emphasize this fact more, that getting a good product in the market from the beginning to the end is an extremely complex process. And you cannot do it with Jugaad beyond a certain point. You just can never do that. So again, that brings to the point that all the flagship schemes that the government is trying to float, you cannot solve them with a Jugaadist mindset. It's a yes and no answer. For example, how connected is this problem? The Make in India is actually very closely connected to, obviously, our GDP, because it's related to your exports and things of that nature. It's connected to jobs, another crisis that might hit you. It's the demographic dividend and all that. It's linked to pollution. How do we sustainably do manufacturing and not kill ourselves in the process of doing it? Okay? And all of these problems somehow have to be thought of, in a very holistic fashion, not in a piecemeal fashion. We can't have a skill development separately going on, not connected to what the universities do. And I have been railing about this with a lot of other people as well. I'm sure I'm not the only one. When we think about skill development, we think, hey, let's have another institute for skill development. That is not the way to go. That's a Jugaadist solution. That's why ITIs never worked. Okay? ITI is a place where you will be fine if your neighbor's kid went, but you will not send your own kid. Okay? It's a second option. Like, oh my God, ITI. It's not aspirational. These are the questions that we have to ask. How do we make everything connected to our own aspirations, and somehow tap into, how can the government, let's say, tap into the individual desire for excellence? Obviously, there is a hidden desire. I would say that collectively we are acting in a very mediocre fashion, but within every individual there is a desire to be good, right? That's a fundamental human nature, that we want to be good at something. But there are some people who are irredeemable, that they don't want to do anything. But let's brush that aside. Even if there are 50% of people who want to excel in what they do, how do we tap into this? So these are the kind of conversations that we would like to do.
So I had actually, I just had a thought coming in my head while I was listening to you guys. Do you also think the inherent nature of our society, in terms of economics and in terms of the way businesses are structured in India still primarily is a small and medium scale businesses run society. Now, sometimes where even I am a MSME in India, sometimes what I have experienced is a lot of times systematized behavior or systematized solutions tend to have a very huge capex, one-time investment cost.
Mm-hmm.
And India still is in the zone of being a primarily small to medium scale society. So how does one get over that problem? Because Jugaad seems to be a stopgap arrangement which costs very little. So how do we solve that problem?
I mean, so that is correct. So Jugaad does not cost much, and that's one of the reasons people go for it. And but I do not think that there are enough institutions in the nation which actually have a lot of money. And we are a poor nation as a country, but there are centers which have a massive amount of wealth. But if you look at them, I mean, I don't want to name any industrial houses, but or even individuals who have the capacity do not invest necessarily in the kind of R&D. Just look at our top industries. How much are they investing in our research and development? They are not. In fact, a lot of the research culture in India got started when some of the MNCs started sending their research over to India because they realized this is cheaper. And we have made our name, for example, in selling of generic drugs, but we have not come out with new drugs ourselves. So in biotechnology, all our name comes from this entire hullabaloo over making generic drugs that are rupee one instead of $1. But what about new drugs, inventions? But we do have people, we do have institutions which can support this kind of work. So if we have, I think as a society, once we develop this understanding that Jugaad is costing us, it is not only costing you currently, it is costing you in the future in terms of lost opportunities. You know, 2 years later, you might have a thriving business right now, but somebody else comes in and they can totally destroy your work, right? So, for example, robotics, which has come into manufacturing in such a big way now, a lot of the robotic manufacturing is threatening the kind of manufacturing that was being done in India.
And you know, with MSME, there is also this element of uh, you know, the regulatory jugaad. That is, if you make laws which are jugaad, it's going to hurt the MSME in the long run. I'll give you an example. Say this is a thought example. This thought experiment. You open up some company which caters to a very niche, market about something. Okay. Say for example, you are going to make furniture out of a certain tree which is commonly available. Say for example, I'm making up this example. Okay. And it's very cheap, it's easy to grow, and blah blah and whatnot. Okay, and you are sourcing it from some jungle somewhere. Suddenly, the government, some environmentalist might come, or some other politician might come, or some another industrial house might come, and they force the government to pass suddenly a new law which completely outlaws that practice, because we love banning, right? That's another Jugaadist thing. We just ban something, and then these companies which have invested so much money on these things are now trapped in this weird nightmare where they can't do anything, and you are losing money, you are losing probably your life even, who knows. So even at the level of the government, you have to stop looking at these things from a very piecemeal kind of thing. You have to understand that if you want the small, if you're talking about small industries or small technical companies, it's not just about the technical aspect. There's also a regulatory aspect which also has to be non-Jugaadist. Okay, for the technical people to not buy into Jugaadist solution, you also have to create an incentive where they are not forced, or at least some of them can take this long shot, big risk, and then come clean at the end of it. Okay, so it's a two-way, according to me, a process that it has to be a two-way process, like both sides.
All right, cool. Now let's discuss some of the work that you guys are involved in, because that's something that always excites me to know, if there's some interesting research that people are into. So Alok, I'm going to start with you. So can you let everybody know, so what are you currently working on, or what do you intend to work on in the future?
Sure. We have been primarily a fluid mechanics group for quite a long time. And in the last 4 or 5 years, we have more focused on soft condensed matter, where soft condensed matter basically means we are looking at materials which are somewhere between a traditional fluid and a traditional solid. And we have, we deal with these every day. Plastic is a soft material, food is a soft material. But now with a huge amount of manufacturing impetus on using these kind of materials, and especially with 3D printing coming in a big way, right? 3D printing mostly currently uses plastics and gel type of substances. So those are, so how do you understand the properties of those? How do you mix and match all those? So that is something that has been focused. But there's something else that we are currently doing, and I'll tell you about that. That is rather interesting. So we have our lab is sort of split in the middle with a section of the people doing engineering work, and then there's a set of people who are looking into biophysics problems. So there is this very interesting bacteria, and this bacteria is there are millions of species of bacteria. Bacteria are 1 micron approximately, usually in size 1 to 10 microns. So they are 10 times smaller than a human hair in a sense. And they have an amazing lifestyle. So bacteria can live by itself like an ant, or it can actually live in colonies together where many of them share work across, and they can even do simple talking with each other. As they can tell the neighbors that I'm around. So there's this one particular bacteria, which what it does is under the right circumstances, it starts precipitating calcium carbonate around itself. So there's a crystal of calcium carbonate grows, and this process is known as biocementation. And it is thought that in the early Earth, when Earth had a huge amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, some of these biocementation processes were the key in sequestering carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and making them into solid phases. And it is believed that at least this contributed in part to the cooling down of the planet. So we are currently looking into the biophysics and the thermodynamics of how this nucleation occurs around this bacteria, and why does this calcium carbonate crystal grow, under what conditions, and maybe if we can even use them for sequestering carbon dioxide and reducing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. So this is quite different from our traditional fluid mechanics work. But
wow, so that would be a very interesting. So I just had an offhand question. So have you guys ever heard of this technology? They're trying to do these carbon capturing kind of a thing where you basically capture CO2 and then you convert it into. So what is your opinion on that? How far have we gone? How far down are we in that technology itself?
So I know of only a couple of them. I mean, the large carbon. So there is one technology where you just take a huge amount of carbon and put it down into reservoirs, empty reservoirs. So, for example, there was an oil well which is empty right now, and you can just push carbon dioxide down there. I still don't think those are viable technologies, because one of the big problems is if you artificially pump carbon dioxide down like that, then if you have cracks, earthquakes, etc., the carbon dioxide can suddenly come up one day, and if you have a population around it, puts them at a grave risk. So there are a set of artificial carbon dioxide sequestration processes or carbon capture processes. I'm not familiar with all of them, but I've worked only with a few. But even there, people are realizing that some of these biological methods might be more apt, because it's slow and it takes carbon dioxide and puts it into a whole different form. So that was one of the inspirations of our idea, that this carbon storage process in wells is not perfect, and leaks have started even in some of the reservoirs at different places of the world where they did store carbon dioxide in big reservoirs. There have been reports of leaks, etc. So that is not. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done there still.
So Ranajay, could you tell us what you guys are working on?
Yeah, so I am actually working on, as I told you earlier, I work on mechanical systems, artificial systems, mechanical machines. And so the kind of machines and the kind of things that we work on nowadays is actually very different from what you are used to. When I talk to you about, say, for example, a robot, okay? All you can think of would be this gigantic arm swinging and picking up stuff and things of that nature. But modern robots are actually much more softer. So we are looking into a very soft, squishy world. So we call these soft machines. That is, machines which are much more softer, much more compliant, so to speak, in the technical language. So what is the advantage of these kind of machines? The advantage is you can have robots with you on your desk. You cannot have this big, clunky, hard robots sitting on your desk because they are a hazard to you. They're too big. But you can have these softer, more integrated robotics on your body, in your surroundings. If you are sick, it can help you rehabilitate. It could be a prosthetic element, or for the military, it could be a robot which can slide and kind of go into a crevice and kind of deform itself to a point where it's just a meter long robot can just be like a few inches by just coiling around. As I'm talking about this, you already know that this is the world that is the world of that resembles our natural world. Every organism we see around are actually soft machines. So one reason why snakes are so feared is because you can find them anywhere. You will find them underneath you can find them underneath your cupboard, in your backyard. You will find them everywhere. So what we do is we look at these natural organisms, and we try to see what makes these systems click. Okay, what is the material behavior that makes these things click? And specifically, to be very specific, I'm actually looking at fishes, for example. Fishes are really fascinating. I would highly encourage all of you and the readers of your podcast to go and look into their history. So fishes are our ancestors. The Matsya Avatar. We come from fishes. All the vertebrates. We are a product of fishes. And one thing that is almost unmistakable in a fish is the scales. You hold a fish and you will always see scales. Okay? And what we look into is what is the fundamental physics behind the scale of the fish that makes it able to swim underwater under different conditions, jump out of water, and the scales never seem to have totally disappeared, because you can see scales even on snakes. If you look at a snake, if you look in the picture of a snake, there are scales there. There are small exoskeleton-like elements even on certain terrestrial animals. So they have never disappeared. So we want to see why they have not disappeared and what is the kind of benefit that this evolutionary achievement has given to these organisms, and how can we use 3D printing to replicate those machines to these more advanced, integrated, next generation of robotics and next generation of, say, for example, all kinds of machines you can think of, not just robots, but inspection bots and underwater unmanned vehicles and flapping UAVs, UAVs that can flap their wings to take care of gusts and things of that nature. So once you move to that world where machines are deforming so much, you need to understand about their structure in a much more complicated. Everything is much more complicated. So what we do is we look into the physics behind these and how can we extract a design principle out of that, and then design it preferably on a 3D printer, and you have these products.
So basically, you are working on how the Boston Dynamics robot actually kicks
Exactly.
ass.
Exactly. That's also nature inspired, by the way. It looks like a dog. It looks like So we are doing the soft equivalent of that.
All right. So I actually, because you guys are teachers too, and you guys do interact with a lot of students in your day-to-day life. So I have to bring it back to the Jugaad mentality here. So what do you think? How far have we gone down in terms of our education system in India? Obviously, I'm not talking about the West. I'm talking about India. So I want to ask two questions to you. One is, how much of this Jugaad mentality is actually a product of our education system itself, or you don't think the education system has anything to do with it? And two, one thing that has always fascinated me about the scientific field in general is, I don't know why. I mean, I could be totally wrong. It's changing. I know it's changing. But I always find scientists in a very weird way very protective of their turf. I don't see a lot of consilience. I'm sure you guys know what the term consilience is, or creating a network of cumulative evidence where there is cross-disciplinary work. It does happen now, but I still find a lot of times some sort of, especially when it comes to working with somebody in the sociology department, and that's why you have weird ass theories coming out of social sciences, because I think the hard sciences and the social sciences actually don't interact with each other, or there is this turf protection that you can't come here or you can't come there. So I want to know your opinion about the overall education system in India and how much does it actually contribute to Jugaad, and then this inherent problem in science when it comes to cross-disciplinary work. So Ranajay, you can go for it first.
I will take the second question because the Indian education, Aloke is probably the better suited to answer that. When we talk about science, there is something that we tend to miss. We think when we think of science, we think science as some cold, calculated machines of some type where you feed in a hypothesis and then a result comes out and you have new science. You have a magic going on there. But we forget that there is a human element to science. It is ultimately done by us, by humans. And the profession will basically reflect what humans are. Okay? And it also reflects our own prejudices, our own insecurities when it comes to science. And it gets amplified because, honestly speaking, science can be disrupted relatively easily. Okay? You can have a new hypothesis that gets validated, and suddenly the entire thing that happened for the last 30, 40 years is gone. That can happen. Or it changes irrevocably. Now, this creates a challenge for a lot of people who have spent their entire lives, okay, on say a certain idea A, and there is a natural. So this turf protection comes very naturally because the barriers are not that high. It's very young guy, like for example, the DNA, the Watson and Crick, they came and they completely changed the way we do biology within a decade. Everything that we knew about biology more or less changed once we knew about the gene. So this turf protection is not a characteristic of science itself, this interdisciplinary thing. It is more about we as humans. We tend to protect what we invested ourselves in. So this will go away eventually when we have better ways of collaborating, of giving credits to each other. This has always been a problem, by the way, if people don't know this, but Isaac Newton, for all his greatness, and I'm a big fan of Isaac Newton, as a person, he may not have been the nicest person because he had his problems. Okay? It happens all the time. And the scientific world, sometimes people confuse their personalities with their science. Okay? The science is impeccable. You cannot go from their personality to the science. But the fact is, the processes are done ultimately by human beings. We can never escape that. In fact, some of the scientific ideas might have come from red herrings. They were not even, true. The inspirations may not have been scientific. Okay, and we have this example that some scientist was dozing off after his dinner, and he has this idea of a snake eating its tail, and that's how he comes up with the structure of benzene. That's actually the story, Kekule's benzene story. So the origin stories of most of the theories may not actually be completely scientific. It's a very human endeavor, and that leads to people being very, very, protective of their turf because there is an element of attack that this new guy comes up with a new theory. Whoa, maybe whatever I did for the last 40 years may just be invalidated. Or he might say, all of that is, because ultimately the process of creating science is human. We are thinking, we go to the government for money, we go to industries to tell this idea is really great. But in the realm of ideas, the entry barrier is somewhat low. It's not that high. It is high in some ways, but not that high.
Yeah, actually, to add to your, example, I clearly remembered, Darwin was not going to process his work, publish his work until he actually found out somebody else had actually done it, and he was like, "यार मैं इसके पहले तो मैं कर दूँ नहीं तो इसको."
Yes, Wallace. So Wallace was almost. So the story with Wallace. He actually sent his manuscript to Darwin to review, and Darwin read it and he's like, "What the hell? I gotta publish my stuff. This guy's going to go ahead and publish his stuff." So that's true. That happens all the time. It's the human element. You can never escape it. If somebody tells me that technology will get rid of this, I have news for you. It's never going to go away as long as we do science.
Yes. So my elder brother always says that he always says that science runs into problems when scientists don't actually perform their dharma properly. So he always says that to me. He's like, the problem is science. It's not the problem is not with the science. The problem sometimes becomes with the scientists, where the scientists are actually, like as you said, human. So Aloke, can you tell me what do you think is the education system right now, and how do you think it has a role to play in breeding this Jugaad mentality?
So the education system is definitely linked, okay, but I think it's linked in a slightly indirect way, in the sense that the education system is meant to breed technocrats who can disrupt Jugaad, who realize that Jugaad is not the solution to these problems, and they are the ones who can bring in the idea of rigor. They can understand the idea of research. They understand that a solution might not work on one day. So you have a solution to a particular complex problem, and then you have to revisit that solution again and again and again. I mean, that's what.
The question is, are we really doing it right now?
No, we are not.
We're probably not doing that.
The education system is not, and I think this goes back to another article that we wrote about engineering India's engineers, and that was also published in Swarajya. And we brought to the fore the point that the education system fails to inspire people. It is, we are not able to thrill the minds of these young guys who are coming into the colleges with the promise of these great problems that need to be solved.
Yes, and the problems are not great. Your efforts are also not going to be that great, and you are going to devolve into this Brownian motion of Jugaad. Just let's get rid of this problem quickly and move on to the next one, because hey, come on, this is not really that big anyways. So you need to inspire people for grand challenges. Okay, that brings the best on in students. When you're young, you really do. Some of the best ones do want to conquer the world. Okay? And if you give them these hackneyed, lab scale problems and things that have been done before.
And our education system is very dry, right?
It's extremely dry.
We focus on rote, exam pass kar lo beta.
Yeah.
Beta, exam pass kar lo.
And there is no contextualization, right? Because when I come to India and give talks and I talk to a lot of students, I am very thrilled by the way that they're looking at modern problems nowadays, the problems that originate in the West and things of that nature. Of course, science is science, But okay, so there's another human element coming here. Science by itself will not tell you which is the most important scientific problem for you. Okay, that is not science's job. That's for us to decide. Okay, and if you are if you are an engineer, say in IIT Delhi, I'm giving you an example, okay, thought example, and your professor gives you a problem of, I don't know, prediction of earthquakes in seismic zones in California. Okay, maybe that's a huge problem. That's a big problem that the world is focused on. But as a student, you might be a little alienated by that. It may be the pollution problem that might inspire you to do that. I'm saying there is a local context here. And it's good to look at global problems, but you have to have problems that are of immediate interest to you. Okay? You have to understand that cutting edge is not necessarily what others are telling you is cutting edge. Science does not tell you what is a cutting edge problem. We humans come to this conclusion that this is what we do. And if you don't find those problems contextualized to your surrounding, and you can correct me on this, it is difficult to inspire whole generations of people to solve this problem. That's how America did, right? They had all their problems.
So, I mean, maybe I can put it this way, that there is no necessarily a global cutting edge. Yeah. There are multiple local cutting edges, right? And unless we focus on the local cutting edges, it's going to be impossible to mend this.
That's how we also can end Jugaad with 1,000 cuts. We start locally, we inspire people, we give them a smaller problem, tell them to give a non-Jugaadi solution. Okay? Don't come up with this banded, piecemeal, unconnected, linear solutions. Okay, think of it in a very systemic, rigorous way, and then train them on these small problems. Okay, like small problem training, and then inspire them. So yeah, their education is absolutely linked to this problem, and I think probably we should do more on this.
Right.
So,
all right. So I'm just going to take a few questions from the live viewers now. So Kiki 1998, he says, "Is cost factor a reason for Jugaad?" So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we discussed this part, right? So cost is a factor, but we have enough institutions for whom cost is not a factor. So we have enough industrial houses, we have enough research houses, for which cost is not an important factor, and they should be the first ones to start correcting that.
Yeah, so this is actually a very good question, and that brings up to my opener. That is, how did we get to this problem? Is this is it in our DNA, or is this we pick? So if it's a cost problem, okay, then it's a common cold. It will go away as we become richer. But the thing is, There are many industrial houses, by the way, who have money. He's right. But I see sometimes in the Twitter feeds, they are actually the first people who celebrate this Jugaad. And they've made an industry out of it. There are professors who teach this as some sort of, an Indian genius, Jugaad, and teach it to the Western audience who probably bite it. They think that this is a unique Indian, it's a Confucianism of India, the Jugaad, and you can do it. But obviously cost can be a factor, but if you look at it, probably it's not as big a factor as you might think it is. In fact, if you solve problems at scale, cost actually comes down. It's actually not that expensive to solve problems at scale. So I think, yes, cost might be a factor at the beginning, but all evidence points to the fact that even people who can afford it, they are also fine with Jugaad.
Because Jugaad has been institutionalized.
Yeah.
I mean, at a very personal, individual level, you might not be left with a choice about Jugaad, but at an institutional level,
Yeah.
it should not be the case.
Yeah.
Right.
High authority in India. That Jugaad is not a problem for them. I mean, you are talking about this abrupt, this road thing.
So the same person has asked another question: why is plagiarism a factor in research I think what they're trying to say is plagiarism a factor in research in our universities? So Aloke, is it a factor, plagiarism? Is it a serious cause for worry?
Okay, this is a tricky question. So I think one of the things was, I mean, I'll give you a very personal point of view here, and that is when I was growing up as a student, we didn't really know what plagiarism was all about, right? I mean, for us, we were never taught. So some of these things, I think, has to be imparted to the students, that it is not okay to find a document and just copy it off. I mean, sometimes you might know that, okay, ethically that it might not be right, but there are times when there are gray zones like, oh, I need to make a point, and I just borrow this guy's figure. But do I need to cite it, or how do I cite it? What is the proper format? I mean, a lot of people don't seem to know that. And I think if we train and educate our students the right way, a lot of this can
But
go
this
on.
also has to be institutionalized. It's not
Yes.
limited to universities. I see many times in Twitter outrage is somebody tweet chura liya. Okay? It comes from there. Blog chura liya or something like that. It's a pervasive problem. Okay, it cuts across. So you have to understand that even a place like Twitter, where you can only retweet and that's it.
Right.
It is not an elaborate latex document or end note which you need to cite. You just retweet it. And people don't do it.
Right.
And it's a cultural systemic thing that a lot of people think it's okay to just. And it's, by the way, it's not related to just India too. When I'll not name the country. Okay, so somebody I hired at the beginning at some point of my life to write an article. I was collaborating with these people, and I saw, as the writing was going on, there were paragraphs, there were islands of superb writing, and it was some P.J. Woodhouse level writing. Okay, and I became suspicious that this guy, how is he writing like this? So I took that whole thing and I put that on Google. It just popped up. It was some other guy. And I then emailed that person. I said, you can't do this. And he said, we can't. That's the thing. He thinks it's fine. As long as you're citing the guy, you can actually copy the whole thing. So sometimes it's basic ignorance. They think if it's out there, well, you have no copyright. You can just do it. But this is one problem that technology might also solve.
So institutionalization, I think, is very.
Yeah.
This is my first proper class, on how do you deal with situations like this, was when I started my PhD studies in the US. Like, okay, if you need to take this, you have to do this, right? So then okay, this is what it needs to be done at this particular stage. So institutionalization, I think, is very important.
It's very important. But technology will help, Kushal. So nowadays in the US, at least, I think I'm sure you guys also do that. We have softwares where students upload their homeworks and it automatically it crawls and it tells you that this has been copied from somewhere else. And sometimes it could be innocuous. You have read a book and you have internalized a way of writing, and you start using those phrases. It's subconscious. You don't know where you picked it up and you just wrote it. So this way, the software can actually then tell you that you just picked it up from P.J. Woodhouse, and then
that. I mean, I personally have bought a software for writing called Grammarly, And the paid version of Grammarly not only does check your grammar, but it actually does the whole plagiarism thing. Like if I write an article, I just used to run it through Grammarly, and it would search the entire internet space and would let me know if even inadvertently have I copied someone or went line for line. So I actually, even when writing for portals where I was not being paid a single penny to write that article, I would have the intellectual honesty of running it through my own personally paid software of of plagiarism. But I guess it's the nature of the person. I mean, at the end of the day, I take a lot of pride in these things that I don't want to be caught or called as a liar. So I'm just going to take a few other super chats. So Aditya Singh just made a comment. He said, Kushal bhai, jugaad ki koi jagah nahi hai research and innovation mein. Aditya Singh, I kind of agree with you, and I'm sure they too. So the same person says plagiarism is akin to theft. Presenting someone else's work as your own, that should be stressed from the very beginning of schooling. So is it done in India, Aloke?
I mean, not in IIC and IIT kind of place.
No.
Maybe,
we have started now.
Okay.
So we at the research level, absolutely. I don't know about schools, because when I was growing up, I don't think I was ever properly told. Right? I mean, you knew that you cannot copy in an exam from your friend nearby, but you had no institutionalized idea about this is what you cannot borrow. If you need to, what is a citation? How do you include that in your work? But I mean, we do that very regularly nowadays.
I think this problem will get solved. I have hope that this is common cold. It will go away.
Yeah.
This is not arthritis. We are not going to live with it forever. This will go away.
This is actually a brilliant comment, and I again can relate to it totally as an Indian manufacturer. So Samir Patil, thanks for the super chat. Samir Patil says, Jugaad seems to have originated in maintenance work. You have to solve problems with what you have at hand at a fraction of time needed for thorough solution. Isko Hindi mein kehte hai thuk lagana. And I'll tell you, many times in my own factory, my maintenance team, say if a machine breaks down, so sometimes, and we have to give this delivery, like, अरे यार माल लेट हो रहा है, ये मशीन अगर चालू नहीं हुई तो हमारी कमिटमेंट है 24 घंटे की, तो क्या करेंगे? तो मेरा मेंटेनेंस वाला he'll come to me and साहब देखो मेरे को थूक लगा के चालू करना पड़ेगा, मैं आपको नेक्स्ट शटडाउन में ठीक करके दे दूंगा. So don't you think somewhere down the line in situations like this, then Jugaad becomes helpful too?
Absolutely. Okay. So let me put it in this way. So Jugaad can be a good lubricant. Okay. It helps you run things smoothly sometimes, but it is not the machinery. Okay? You cannot build things from Jugaad. You can help run things, or when we try to run an experiment, we sometimes have a setup which looks like Jugaad. Okay? A rubber band there, a small maybe chewing gum there to fix some circuits or something like that. But we know that this is not the final product. No way is this the final product. This is to probe into something, to make something run for some time. But this is just the lowest end of the food chain. We are not going to make the product out of this. So at best, this is almost like a lubricant, nothing more.
So I think the phrase you use, "thuk lagana," is itself representative of that idea. Okay, this is not supposed to be permanent.
Yeah.
This is once in a blue moon this happens. Okay, that's fine. But you cannot make it institutionalized. You cannot make a machinery out of it.
But some of it can be solved. I mean, if you have consequences, that's the thing that he brought up, right? That how do you talk with government? You have to put numbers. If there is a Jugaad and there is a massive accident and the company has to pay millions of dollars, suddenly the others will realize you can't get away with this. Okay?
Yeah. So I always say this to someone who defends Jugaad is like, I was like, देखो अगर वो एक MSME का यूनिट है और उसको सिर्फ एक शॉट को सोल्डर करना है टाइम पास के लिए, then it works fine. But I don't want Jugaad in a Boeing. I don't want Jugaad in the Boeing where 300 people are being flown. I'm sorry. I don't want a Jugaad on Indian railway tracks where lives of millions of people are mattering. So I was like, Jugaad is also subject to conditions. I mean, Jugaad at a micro scale where nothing of any major importance is involved is okay. Then Jugaad can become some sort of, of a stopgap arrangement. But if Jugaad, अभी आप बोल दोगे, Airbus 370 में मैं जुगाड़ कर दूं, भाई मेरा उसमें 300 लोग उड़ने वाले, वो साथ में उड़ जाएंगे उसके. So it depends also.
So you brought in a very good point. So this is what I also call the Boeing test. If you think that this idea will work, now let's flip it. let's tell you that this idea was used in the Boeing 737 or 747, which you're going to write. Are you going to write after I tell you this? So that's the that's the test. So all the business school professors who say Jugaad is a great idea. Here is my flip. Here is me flipping it. If I say that this airplane was a product of Jugaad, are you going to write it or not? If you say by all honestly that I am going to write it, then you really have brought it. You really do think that Jugaad is a good idea. But if you hesitate even a little bit, there is a problem.
True. So all right, guys. I guess we've touched the 1 hour mark, and as always, I like to end things around an hour. So I'm just gonna leave you, all of you, with the last paragraph of the article. By the way, the link to the article is in the description of the podcast. So when you guys watch this, you can go into the link of the podcast on the description there, and I've left the link to the article. So I'm going to end you with the words that both Aloke and Ranajay have written. So they say, we are a young republic, a growing economic power, and most importantly, an aspirational society. Short-term mercantile instincts should not stop us from treading the right path forward. We cannot afford to inculcate bad habits in our youth, for they will eventually become disorders. I repeat, they will eventually become disorders. I couldn't agree more with this. Deforming our adulthood, let us pledge not to degenerate into the distorted blunderland of Jugaadism, but rise to honor our heritage of profound thinkers. I think nobody could have put it better. You guys have nailed it in the last paragraph that, Jugaad is more often than not basically celebrating mediocrity and suppressing. And I always say this, and it hurts a lot of people. I always say this: people with a shitty present always glorify an imagined past. And and I get a lot of flack for this, online, offline, at home, outside home. They're like, तेरे को तो कुछ अच्छा ही नहीं लगता. नहीं, मेरे को बहुत कुछ अच्छा लगता है मेरे देश के बारे में, इसके लिए मैं रह रहा हूँ इधर. मगर the point is, I want better, not only for myself. I want this thing to become better for the future generations. So Alok, Ranajay, once again, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Hey Kushal, thanks a lot for having us. It was a really pleasant experience and very nice talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kushal. Thanks once again. Yeah.
All right, guys. So you know where to find me. If you like what I'm doing over here, subscribe, like, share the videos. I'm already on Patreon. The link is on the screen right now. It is www.patreon.com/Cārvāka. And if you like what I'm doing, if you have any further questions, you know where to get hold of me. You can leave the questions in the comment sections, or send me an email, or you can catch me on Twitter. Until then, namaste, goodbye, good night. See you next time.
Thank you. Good night.